Chapter 76. Sin City. Doomsday Spiritual Artifact Master. You are dead. The octagonal iron gate of the cage closed with a clang, and the three on the arena became true beasts in a fight. Facing Song K were two prisoners. Though their muscular build didn't look as intimidating as Orson's, judging from their stances, they were clearly skilled fighters. The surrounding prisoners dared not cheer recklessly, and the whole arena fell silent. White grasped his goblet again, taking a sip with an enraptured expression. Two former Alliance champions, Mayweather, with an arm length of 1.85 meters, a genius offensive boxer, and Perry, a defensive counterattack master, skilled at wearing down the opponent's patience. Let me see how long you can last. The fight began. Mayweather moved his feet at a high frequency, constantly advancing and squeezing Song K's living space, while Perry moved like an elusive slippery eel, effortlessly deflecting any attacks that came his way, making it difficult for anyone to strike. Song K kicked in the air, and Mayweather raised his arms to block. The powerful counterforce pushed him back 2 steps. Song K landed gracefully like a swallow and began to think calmly. To deal with such an aggressive opponent, she needed to amplify his fighting spirit and then destroy his psyche, causing him to lose judgment completely on the stage. Suddenly, Song K lifted her head, raised her right thumb, and then turned it down, making a provocative gesture. The prisoners hissed, and Mayweather became furious. He launched a fierce onslaught, but Song K effortlessly diffused each punch. Is that all? Song K tilted her head and smiled disdainfully. After spending a long time with Zhuang Qingyan, even her subtle expressions were becoming more like his. When mocking someone now, the curve at the corner of Song K's mouth carried a certain malicious and indifferent charm, with 3 parts mockery, 3 parts coldness, and 4 parts indifference. Mayweather's fighting spirit engulfed his rationality. His punches became even more relentless, rapidly depleting his own stamina. Song K agilely dodged, making him run all over the place, unable to land a hit, and at the same time, disturbing Perry hiding in his turtle-like shell. With the rhythm disrupted, the actions of the two boxers became disjointed, stumbling and colliding with each other several times, missing Song K. Mayweather and Perry exchanged glances and adjusted their strategy, joining forces to seize the outer perimeter where Song K was. Mayweather threw a straight punch with his right hand, and Perry turned defense into offense, launching a jab to block Song K's retreat. Just when everyone thought she had nowhere to escape, Song K hung her hand on the side of the octagonal cage and jumped up, grabbing onto it, like a gecko that can stick to surfaces. Her feet gripped the iron mesh, seeming to walk on level ground. In a few movements, she climbed to the top of the platform. The legendary, flying on eaves and walls, a perfect evasion. The two belt holders suddenly felt something was wrong and looked up, alert. In the glaring spotlight, a figure leapt high and descended swiftly. Wasn't that boxing? She knew it too. Song K clenched her fists and threw a punch at a slightly upward left angle. The punch hit Mayweather's solar plexus. This was a boxer's deadly point. Mayweather suffered a massive blow and perished on the spot. As she landed, Song K's right leg spun and kicked, landing squarely on Perry's left jaw. The rich vagus nerve in that area instantly went haywire, the brainstem ceased its function, and Perry's pupils dilated, losing consciousness and collapsing. In this dazzling counterattack that lasted less than 10 seconds, 1 dead and 1 injured, Song K effortlessly KO'd the 2 renowned belt holders. The entire audience of prisoners first gaped in astonishment, then fell into complete silence. This was perhaps the quietest morning exercise in the 7th floor's history. Someone nervously swallowed, cautiously glancing at White, fearing another sudden outburst. At this time, someone dared to pour oil on the fire. "Warden, will you fulfill the reward you promised in person?" Zhuang Qingyan asked with a cheerful smile. He had to make White admit it out loud. Nearly 1,000 inmates and prison guards witnessed it. As long as White still cared about his face and wanted to maintain his reputation, the probability of him reneging was relatively low. White's sharp eyes fixed on Zhuang Qingyan, and he pulled the corners of his mouth with a smile, neither sincere nor insincere. Of course, I, as the warden, promise to reward the three of you by moving you to the 8th floor. The cruel morning exercise continued, but Song Ke had lost interest in watching. Let's look for him. Each of the three was responsible for a different direction. After a while, Song Ke withdrew her gaze and saw the same disappointment on the faces of the other two. Not here. I didn't find anyone either. Lu Xiaoyu wasn't on the 7th floor. Warden, do you really want to send them to the 8th floor? White's deputy asked anxiously. I always feel that they have a different purpose for coming to the death prison. They caused trouble before under Warden Shi's lead, and their intentions were not good. White dismissed it, smirking. Send them tonight. This way, they can catch the morning exercise on the 8th floor tomorrow. As long as he sent them down layer by layer, it wouldn't take long before he could witness their lifeless bodies. White was very certain of this. Wishes were beautiful, but reality was incredibly cruel. On the second day, Su Cha and Song Ke broke through the 8th floor. On the third day, White amended the rules, requiring Song Ke to take on 3 opponents alone. The result was the deaths of the 3, and the 9th floor was cleared. On the 4th day, the elite inmates on the 10th floor were defeated, and White smashed all the vases in his office and broke his beloved whip collection. As the warden, his dignity was trampled and ground into the ground. There was only 1 floor left. These damned bastards dared to run wild in his territory and urinate on his head so brazenly. White's eyes turned red with anger, his chest heaving violently. The shrewd deputy took the opportunity to remind, Warden, actually, the 3 of them have weaknesses in their combination. The handicapped person in the wheelchair is a good breakthrough point. White was taken aback, his eyes shifted, and he quickly thought of something. An evil smile crept onto his face. Is that disgusting thing on the 11th floor still here? It is, the deputy confirmed and gave an affirmative reply. During the morning exercise time, Song Ke, Zhuang Qingyan, and Su Cha arrived on the octagonal cage arena on the 11th floor. The number of inmates on this floor was less than 200. When Song Ke looked over, the inmates on the other side were silently appraising them. Song Ke furrowed her brows and quickly noticed something unusual. The inmates here seemed somewhat deformed in appearance. Some had exceptionally long heads but very thin arms. Some had asymmetric eyes and terrifyingly wide open mouths. In short, there was a kind of indescribable strangeness about their appearances. Zhuang Qingyan said, the 11th floor is the ultra-abyss zone. They probably haven't seen light for a very long time. Just like deep-sea creatures often appeared bizarre to adapt to environmental and pressure changes, these prisoners trapped in the death prison for a long time had undergone subtle genetic changes within their bodies. Judging from their outward appearances, they could no longer be called normal. A few minutes later, White and the prison guards arrived. Song Ke moved her shoulders a bit. Yesterday was 1 against 3, and given White's vengeful nature, it should be 1 against 4 today, right? Wait, White suddenly reached out to stop her. There's a change in the rules. The blood whip in his hand pointed confidently at Zhuang Qingyan. Today, he must go up. Song Ke was displeased. White was changing the rules as he pleased, which was too arbitrary. White's condescending tone seemed to bestow favor upon them. Here's the deal. As long as he wins, neither of you has to fight. I'll declare you the winners. Song Ke shook her head and refused. No need. I'll do it for him, with however many of you. I said he must go up today. No one can lie down and win all the time. What's wrong? Addicted to freeload off women? White said, annoyed. Zhuang Qingyan, of course, wouldn't be provoked by a few words from him. However, it would be better to resolve the issue quickly. The wheelchair he was using now was the basic model assigned after entering the death prison. However, after 2 activity days, Song Ke had secretly modified it for him, hiding various lethal weapons throughout. He might not necessarily lose if he went up to the arena to face these deformed inmates. Zhuang Qingyan held Song Kei's hand and quietly shared his thoughts. Song Kei still disagreed with him taking the risk. Zhuang Qingyan patiently explained, "At times like this, try not to confront him directly. It will only waste time. Don't forget our goal." All 200 people here could be seen at a glance, and since they hadn't found the person they were looking for, their current objective was to descend to the 12th floor as soon as possible. This was also the last region under White's rule. Song Kei was reluctantly persuaded and nodded slightly. "Fine, if you can't handle it, call for me, and I'll help you." Zhuang Qingyan smiled helplessly. "All right, I'll definitely call for you." Under the watchful gaze of Song Kei and Su Cha, Zhuang Qingyan entered the octagonal cage arena, and the iron door slowly closed and locked behind him. Song Kei was stunned. Something was wrong. Why was the door closed when the opponent hadn't entered the stage yet? She suddenly turned her head, only to see a mysterious smile on White's face. Suddenly, a black hole appeared below the arena, and the mechanical noises of the platform started. The heavy and murky breathing sounds were getting closer to them. When the creature fully revealed itself, everyone present, except White, was shocked. It was an evolved zombie, or rather, an evolved zombie adapted to the abyss environment. Compared to its human predecessor, it resembled a fish called the deep-sea anglerfish. Its large forehead had a fleshy protrusion resembling a luminescent tumor. The lower jaw was extremely prominent, and the face had large gill openings. Its slender limbs were covered with fine scales and pointed adipose fins. The deformed zombie sluggishly turned its head and, upon spotting Zhuang Qingyan as the closest target, roared and lunged at him. "You're playing dirty," Song Kei shouted in anger. Putting aside why an evolved zombie appeared on the 11th floor, White had just forced Zhuang Qingyan into the arena, clearly wanting him dead. "Ha ha ha, when did I say that your opponent must be a human?" White sneered, laughing arrogantly. Song Kei clenched the iron mesh with both hands. Su Cha whispered, "Don't panic, let's see if he can handle it." Zhuang Qingyan skillfully maneuvered his wheelchair, dodging left and right. After 6 months, he had completely adapted to mechanical movement. The wheelchair was as agile as if it were a part of his body. Bone-cutting blade pieces popped out from the pedal with a shoo. These were the spiritual weapons modified by Song Kei. Zhuang Qingyan had chosen the perfect angle, and they flew out precisely, hitting the zombie's knee. The howling zombie lost its balance and fell, its dorsal fin on its back thrusting towards Zhuang Qingyan's face. Zhuang Qingyan tapped on the shield, and a regular shield popped up, blocking the attack. People with high intelligence had an advantage anywhere. Zhuang Qingyan, leveraging his wheelchair, countered swiftly while calmly observing. He gradually discovered the weak point of this deformed zombie. It seemed to have no vision or severely degraded vision, with both pupils so small that they were almost invisible, relying entirely on the glowing tumor on its forehead to discern directions. Zhuang Qingyan reached back, and in the moment the deformed zombie lunged at him again, he pulled out a miniature rapid-fire crossbow from a rear compartment. Pew pew pew, hair-thin needles poured out, hitting and bursting the glowing tumor on the zombie's forehead from a close range. A putrid yellowish fluid sprayed all over the place. The zombie seemed to sense the pain of losing its sight, clutching its head and kneeling, howling in agony. Seizing the opportunity, Zhuang Qingyan accelerated the wheelchair and rushed forward. Stepping on the pedal, the bone-cutting blade popped up high again, accurately puncturing its skull from front to back. They won. Song Kei jumped with excitement, even more thrilled than if she had won herself. Zhuang Qingyan breathed slightly heavily after a long time without such activity. He controlled the blade to turn and dug out a green crystal from the zombie's brain. He turned around and smiled at Song Kei outside the octagonal cage, his eyes curved, still portraying the frail appearance of a scholarly individual. "We can go to the 12th floor now," Song Kei cheered happily towards him. Zhuang Qingyan was about to say something when a cold voice rang out from behind them. You can't, he lost. A chilly voice rang out from behind them. White's smile was full of malice. In arena combat, the use of any weapons is not allowed. He violated the rules, so you lost. Zhuang Qingyan narrowed his eyes. White had never mentioned this omitted rule, not even from the 7th to the 11th floor before Zhuang Qingyan went up. It was intentional. If you win, there's a reward. If you lose, you naturally have to accept punishment. White's face was red with excitement. With a gleam in his eyes, he took out a small connector from his leather jacket pocket and pressed it without blinking. Boom! The ground of the entire arena shattered, and Zhuang Qingyan, along with his wheelchair, plummeted into the bottomless abyss. Everything happened too quickly. By the time Song Ke reacted, Zhuang Qingyan had already disappeared from her sight. Where did you take him? She asked, her voice filled with the impending storm. To go from the 11th to the 12th floor, they had to use the internal elevator. It was impossible to fall directly from the arena. White sat back in his chair and leisurely took a puff of his cigar, the red glow stinging Song Ke's eyes. They had fought tooth and nail on the verge of life and death, all for the opportunity to advance to the 12th floor. But White, clearly, he set the rules himself, and now he effortlessly broke them, never treating them as equals. In White's eyes, what were they? Disposable pawns for his entertainment, or simply worthless trash to vent on? Where did you take him? Song Ke raised her voice, her clear questioning echoing throughout the arena, resonating layer upon layer. White calmly looked at her, blowing smoke rings contemptuously. Can't you see? He's already gone down, to the 13th floor, or maybe the 14th. Who knows? Anyway, it's not my territory down there. He had thrown Zhuang Qingyan, the one in the wheelchair who couldn't use abilities, into the deepest part of the death prison. A completely unknown and terrifying place. You are dead, Song Ke said, each word carefully enunciated. White sneered dismissively, extinguished the cigar, and stood up, the blood whip in his hand making a faint sound. Take a good look. I am the king of the death prison. What are you? What qualifications do you have to challenge me? Are awakeners really that great? Here, you're still nothing but trash. Song Ke felt something burning fiercely inside her. Was it fire? No, it wasn't fire. It was an uncontrollable anger. The spiritual force in her body surged, her cells activated and differentiated, forming new combinations. Her formidable ability broke through the constraints, bursting out of her body. Song Ke closed her eyes and opened them again. A deep blue light flashed in her pupils. In the astonished gazes of everyone, a Fangtian halberd materialized out of thin air. It's impossible. Using abilities, it's impossible, White exclaimed. 6,000 meters below the ocean surface, in the legendary forbidden zone of abilities, S-Class Awakener Song Ke ignited a dazzling display of her abilities. White was in a state of shock, instinctively swinging the blood whip in his hand. The long whip could restrain short weapons, but once they encountered longer weapons, they were their natural enemies. While White's blood whip had strong armor-piercing capabilities, it required maintaining a distance. As he swung his blood whip, Song Ke wielded her razor-sharp Fangtian halberd. Before the blood whip could approach her, she deflected it with a single move, extending the halberd's blade to pierce White's abdomen from a great distance. Startled, White hastily retreated, but Song Ke closed the distance rapidly. In an instant, the cold halberd was inches away. Guards, stop her, White shouted in a panic. Su Cha, hold off the others, Song Ke said, positioning Su Cha to block the guards and prisoners rushing to assist. Song Ke advanced like a drawn sword, step by step. White retreated in disarray, desperately dodging, but to no avail. The Fangtian halberd pressed forward relentlessly, piercing straight into his throat. White's eyes bulged, and blood spurted from his 7 orifices. His ruptured windpipe crackled, making it impossible for him to utter a complete sentence. Song Ke coldly withdrew the Fangtian halberd, letting the blood flow freely from the wound. White's burly body twitched a few times and then ceased its final breath. A person who found amusement in death would eventually witness their own demise. The entire death prison erupted in a piercing alarm. Level 1 alert. Level 1 alert. The warden is dead. Levels 7 to 12 experienced violent tremors, causing the prisoners to stumble and fall. The internal elevator hummed and buzzed, and its doors slid open automatically. Hurry, we need to leave. The prison floor is about to be automatically sealed, a senior prison guard exclaimed, suddenly awakened as if from a dream. A level 1 alert hadn't occurred in over a decade, only happening during the transition of a warden. During a level 1 alert, the floors under the warden's control were completely sealed until the new warden took over. Su Cha rushed to Song Kei's side, asking, "What should we do?" Song Kei was about to respond when the display board in front of them erupted in a glaring red light. The crime record was activated. Her mind felt like it was being stabbed by 1,000 needles, as if it were about to explode. Song Kei crouched down in agony, using all her willpower to resist. In the ethereal Cotard band, a hidden call persisted, constantly tempting her to enter the mouth of the arena. Come down, you, go first and join them." Song Kei pushed Su Cha. Su Cha hesitated. "Go," Song Kei shouted. Su Cha clenched his fist. "All right." Song Kei was clearly unwilling to leave Zhuang Qingyan behind. He would be of no help here. It was better to join the others first and think of another plan. Su Cha followed the fleeing crowd and rushed towards the elevator. Come down, that elusive voice continued to echo in her mind, disturbing her greatly. Song Kei used the Fangtian halberd to support herself and slowly stood up. Her consciousness was gradually becoming chaotic. In that last moment of clarity, she leapt, jumping into the gap in the center of the arena. Whether she went down or not, it didn't matter. Who was afraid of whom? I will find you. Chapter 77. Sin City, 11. Doomsday Spiritual Artifact Master. Long time no see. After falling from the platform on the 11th floor, the basic model wheelchair was shattered and unusable. Zhuang Qingyan pulled out a long strip from the steel frame at the bottom, using it as a makeshift crutch. He limped forward, with several joints of his body bruised and his hands scraped. Fortunately, none were serious, except the knee connected to the injured leg, which pressed on the nerve, causing a piercing pain that came in waves. The surroundings were dimly lit, and only vague silhouettes could be seen. The cells on this level were empty, devoid of any human presence. After walking for about 10 minutes, Zhuang Qingyan stopped in front of an open cell. The prisoner inside was emaciated, with hair resembling tangled straw strewn all over the place. He was curled up in a pile of hair, and if it weren't for the slight movement of his chest, he would have looked like a corpse that had been dead for a long time. 45 years. A cold, stern voice suddenly sounded from behind. Zhuang Qingyan quickly turned around to see a prison guard, around 50 or 60 years old, wearing a neat, old-fashioned police uniform and looking at him calmly. When did this person approach? Zhuang Qingyan hadn't noticed at all, and his hand gripping the crutch tightened slowly. His name is Senran, Green Anaconda, once a top-ranked assassin in the Alliance. He was imprisoned in the death prison in the year 2 of the new calendar, and this year marks the 45th year, the prison guard explained. Senran, Zhuang Qingyan silently repeated the name, quickly retrieving relevant records from the database in his mind. Like Su Cha, Senran also hailed from the rainforest and was an active figure decades ago. The most prominent rumor about him was that he successfully assassinated the neighboring country's leader on the eve of a globally watched international conference, directly leading to the Alliance's annexation of that country. However, it was likely that no one remembered that now. You're not a prisoner in our cell block, the prison guard stated confidently. William White threw me down here, Zhuang Qingyan replied. The prison guard fell silent for a moment. There was no particular reaction upon hearing the name of the warden. Instead, he continued, from now on, remember, You can only enter here, not leave. Stillness is your eternal enemy. Get used to the timeless solitude. Solitude? Zhuang Qingyan smiled silently and continued to hobble forward. Ahead was another distinctive cell. In the corner of the room was a glossy, illusionary nutrient pod. The prisoner lying inside had his eyes tightly closed, his naked body soaked in non-decomposing nutrient fluid. There was a small black box connected to the pod, supplying power. Smail, Zhuang Qingyan softly spoke his name. You know him, the prison guard said, his voice devoid of emotion. Smail is a figure recorded in textbooks. Who wouldn't know him? Zhuang Qingyan's eyes reflected the light from the bottom of the nutrient pod. But few people know that this renowned visionary of District A5 is also the founder of the Country of Old People ideology. The prison guard fell silent for a moment and objectively remarked, You come from an extraordinary background, and you're very knowledgeable. Zhuang Qingyan refrained from giving a definite evaluation of the prison guard. He lowered his gaze, lost in thought. Even creations like nutrient pods, tearing through the fabric of technology, could appear in District F. It seemed that the establishment of the death prison was closely related to the covert forces within the Alliance's higher echelons. Is he dead? Zhuang Qingyan inquired. From a biological standpoint, no. The prisoner's sentence is 100 years. To prevent premature death, we have detached his consciousness from his body, ensuring his consciousness survives and endures 100 years of imprisonment here, the prison guard calmly explained. The prison guard's demeanor was unexpectedly calm, readily answering questions. He didn't reprimand Zhuang Qingyan for wandering around so aimlessly and not returning to the cell. In the dim light emanating from the nutrient pod, Zhuang Qingyan scrutinized the neatly combed gray hair under the officer's cap and the weathered, alert eyes. Officer, are you this patient with all the prisoners? Zhuang Qingyan asked. The prison guard replied, deflecting the question, No one has come down here for a long time. I see. How many prisoners are left? Zhuang Qingyan inquired. 42, the prison guard added, still alive. Zhuang Qingyan lightly tapped the floor with his cane. Officer, can I move around freely since I can't leave anyway? You can, the prison guard nodded. After getting the answer he wanted, Zhuang Qingyan slowly moved forward, and the prison guard followed him silently. Zhuang Qingyan, what does this mean? We agreed on free movement. Why are you following me? Song K plunged into a void. After falling from the arena's gap, she landed on a long slope that seemed endless. Along the way, there were different exits, but she was unconscious at the time, too weak to struggle, and slid directly to the deepest point, crashing onto the ground with a thud. She didn't know how long had passed before Song K faintly regained consciousness. It was pitch black around her, the kind where you couldn't see your hand in front of your face. Song K, lying down, moved her fingers and attempted to use her abilities, all to no avail. The fantastical sensation of her abilities erupting just now could no longer be grasped. The spiritual power in her body felt like stagnant, depleted water, unable to sense any ripples. Even the injuries that hadn't healed properly on her chest started to ache miserably at this moment. Song K fumbled to stand up, exploring back and forth in the winding passages. She walked down several dead ends before finally entering a spacious area. There were faint breaths in her ears, seemingly coming from somewhere higher than her. Song K abruptly looked up, although she couldn't see anything. Who? Me? Who are you? I am me. I've always been here. Always here. Song K realized this was likely a fellow prisoner, and she might be able to gather some information from them. She carefully moved towards the voice, step by step, and finally sat down in a corner, exhausted. Where is this place? She asked. The death prison, the voice replied. No, I meant, which level are we on? No response from the other person. Song K tried a different question. Apart from me, have others fallen down here? No. Song K lowered her head in frustration. The 13th to 18th floors seemed quite different from what she had expected. How was she going to find Zhuang Qingyan? In the silence, the young-sounding voice spoke again. Your body is perfect. Song Kei's hair stood on end, and a chilling sensation ran down her spine. She had heard similar indifferent praise from another person's lips before. At the public cemetery in Ferrara, the super AI Ilya had made comments like, I would still like this body of yours. What do you mean? Song Kei asked, feigning composure. Just a compliment. Your limbs and joints have a vigorous flow of vitality, very healthy. The man's tone carried a hint of melancholy. Song Kei squeezed her palm nervously and asked, Are you not healthy? The man fell silent again. His silence eased Song Kei's tension a bit. Perhaps he was missing an arm or a leg, and he made that comment out of envy. I have a friend. He broke his leg, but he loves life and is always positive. Song Kei spoke nonsense in the darkness. The man's tone showed some confusion. Are you comforting me? Song Kei stammered, thank you, but I don't need it. Quote. Communicating with him was difficult. Song Kei had a headache. I want to explore the area. Do you want to come along? I can't move. I am like a tree. Trees have soil to root into, and so do I. Song Kei was filled with question marks. This person seemed to be speaking very seriously, but she couldn't understand him at all. Trees can't talk, Song Kei argued. You're not a tree. How do you know trees can't talk? I'm not a tree, and you're not a tree either. You're not me. How do you know I'm not a tree and can't talk? Oh no, he turned the tables on her. Song Kei couldn't argue with him and could only simmer in frustration. After a while, the man initiated communication again. So, you've seen it now. Seen what? A talking tree, me. Quote. Let's discuss something. After you die, can I have your body for use? No, you're quite stingy. Song Kei was infuriated. Me, stingy? Okay, whatever you say. This person's way of thinking was truly strange, rigid, and robotic, exuding an odd sense of formalism. Although he seemed eager to communicate, he might lack social skills as he could easily annoy people upon opening his mouth. I'm going to look for someone, Song Kei declared, and she began to walk away. However, it was so dark that she accidentally stepped on something and stumbled. You stepped on me. I'm sorry, Song Kei said with a choked voice. How could I possibly step on you when your voice was at least 10 meters away from me? I accept your apology. There was a slight rustling sound accompanied by the sound of leaves withdrawing from under her feet swiftly. Song Kei was taken aback. An absurd thought crossed her mind. Could she really be talking to a tree? Song Kei wandered in the dark for a while. The place was vast, and she found nothing. She returned to where she started, feeling disheartened. Whom are you looking for? I'm sure it's only me here. Why didn't you say that earlier? Song Kei was annoyed. Do I need to say this kind of thing in advance? I thought you knew, the man replied, not sarcastic but genuinely puzzled. Song Kei stretched out her limbs and lay down on the ground, feeling exhausted. She needed to rest for a few minutes. At least the 13th to 18th floor seemed safer than she had imagined. Zhuang Qingyan, please wait for me a little longer. Asterisk from the 13th to the 18th floor. Zhuang Qingyan checked each level one by one. Besides Senran and Smail, he found the other 40 prisoners. They were all well-known figures within the Alliance, but here, they were indistinguishable from the living dead. It might have taken 2 or maybe 3 days, but the specific time was immeasurable, as he had no reference point. Due to excessive walking, blisters formed on his palms and arms, and his intact left leg had also begun to ache intensely. Officer, what do you think is the purpose of the death prison's existence? Zhuang Qingyan turned to the person who had been quietly following him. The death prison is a necessary product of the Alliance's development at a specific stage, created with the emergence of class and division of districts. Necessary product. What about the crime record? Is that necessary too? Zhuang Qingyan chuckled. The prison guard remained silent for a second, as if unfamiliar with the sudden use of that term, and didn't respond immediately. Zhuang Qingyan instantly understood. Apart from the prisoners, the only other person on this level was the prison guard. The man's true identity had become apparent. "The person I'm looking for isn't here," Zhuang Qingyan stated. "All the prisoners from the 13th to the 18th floors are here, alive," the prison guard replied. "Is that so? I guess the death prison must have more than 18 floors." Zhuang Qingyan raised his gaze slightly. "Isn't that right, Lord Hades?" The prison guard fell silent. "Sorry, I should be more precise and address you as the former Lord Hades," Zhuang Qingyan said slowly. The prison guard had been giving off an aura of dissonance ever since he appeared. Later, Zhuang Qingyan gradually noticed that this person didn't breathe, had no chest movement, and displayed an unnaturally stable emotional state. He remembered Senran, who had been imprisoned 45 years ago, in detail, but he couldn't recognize the crime record that every present-day prisoner had, nor did he know about William White, the infamous, ruthless warden. Connecting all these oddities left only one possibility. However, this possibility likely hid other secrets. "You've been emphasizing, alive, all along because you know you're no longer a living being. So, what are you? A puppet or a marionette?" Zhuang Qingyan asked. "You don't need to answer. Regardless of what you are, take me to see the true Lord Hades." "Are you dead?" the man asked. "No." Song Kei lifted her leg slightly, indicating that she was still alive, though the man probably couldn't see her. "Oh," the man's voice sounded a little disappointed. "When will you die, then?" Song Kei retorted, "You go first, and I'll die later." "But trees have long lifespans." "My lifespan is also long," Song Kei replied spitefully, "longer than yours." The man was about to engage in a logical argument with her about whose lifespan is longer, when he suddenly paused and said, "Someone's coming." Song Kei immediately rolled over and asked eagerly, "Who's coming? Are they alive? How many people? Are they male or female? Where are they?" Finally, someone was coming, and it got her really excited. The man thought silently for a moment and muttered to himself, "To meet people, you need to have a light. Why didn't you turn on the light earlier if you had one?" Song Kei shouted in disbelief, considering she had been stumbling in the dark for so many days. The moment his words fell, a faint light began to shine, gradually brightening from the distance. Song Kei instinctively closed her eyes and waited for her pupils to adjust to the surroundings' brightness. When she cautiously opened her eyes, she was shocked by the scene in front of her. A vast sea of data formed a lush, towering tree right in the center of the space. It emitted a vibrant green glow of life. The man who had been speaking to Song Kei was completely surrounded by flowing code. His legs, from the thighs down, were missing, but an endless stream of data continuously poured in, forming the shape of virtual legs. Simultaneously, they acted as two flexible branches, winding and extending throughout the entire space. In other words, the man was a part of the massive tree. Silver hair, ice blue eyes. Song Kei had never seen a genuine ice blue eye before. Lu Xinglan's eyes were not pure. They had a faint touch of ice blue. But at this moment, she was certain that the man in front of her had the purest form of ice blue eyes. It was hard to describe the exact color in words. It was like the first snow of winter, like a frozen mirror-like lake, like translucent crystal. But it was by no means lifeless. Every time the man blinked, one could see stars moving within them. Lu Xiaoyu, this tree. No, this person was Lu Xiaoyu. They had finally found the person they had been searching for. Two other figures slowly emerged from the darkness. The man with the crutches, upon seeing the scene before him, was initially taken aback but then smiled slightly. "It's really you. Haven't seen you for years. How did you end up in such a pitiful state? The Lu family dealt quite a blow. They even broke both of your legs?" Lu Xiaoyu blinked in confusion and his silver hair scattered over his shoulders. "I have legs." The data around him trembled slightly, and the branches decorated with green 101,010 leaves rustled. "You're the one without legs," Lu Xiaoyu retorted. "You seem to be enjoying yourself as the Lord Hades here." Zhuang Qingyan removed the crime record from his shoulder and casually threw it in front of him. Is this lousy thing also your creation? Lu Xiaoyu glanced at the crime record on the ground, then looked back at Zhuang Qingyan. He furrowed his brows slightly, and the data flow around him accelerated, making it clear that he was not pleased. Zhuang Qingyan raised an eyebrow and smiled. What's this? Lost your legs and your memory has regressed? The flow of data came to an abrupt halt, and Lu Xiaoyu observed Zhuang Qingyan's expression for a while before softly saying, "Ah, it's you." Zhuang Qingyan. Song Ke hurried over to support him. Zhuang Qingyan breathed a sigh of relief. He was nearly at his limit. He obediently relaxed, leaning against Song Ke. Song Ke complained, "I was looking for you and couldn't find you. It's so dark in here, and I couldn't get out." Zhuang Qingyan pinched her puffed cheeks lightly and playfully tugged them from side to side. In response, Song Ke shook her head from side to side, mimicking his actions. Zhuang Qingyan chuckled, "All right, stop acting cute." "I'm fine." "Acting cute?" Song Ke's face remained expressionless as she punched him in the face, causing his head to tilt. "Hiss, you're so fierce," Zhuang Qingyan exclaimed softly. "Zhuang Qingyan." Lu Xiaoyu suddenly called his name, repeating it with a strange tone. His pair of pure ice blue eyes locked onto Zhuang Qingyan, and Zhuang Qingyan returned the gaze. Across a distance of 10 meters, both remained silent, yet their expressions were remarkably similar, right down to the slight chin lift as they observed one another. Transcending the vast expanse of time and space, a long time ago, two equally brilliant and proud young men, neither willing to yield to the other, constantly challenged each other and ultimately had to shake hands and make peace. Song Ke belatedly remembered that Zhuang Qingyan had once said that Lu Xiaoyu was his friend. Were they really friends, these two oddballs? Lu Xiaoyu awkwardly tugged at the corners of his mouth, trying to form a smile. "Long time no see, Zhuang Qingyan. TNO tilde the last team member is here tilde and he looks like Gojo Satoru tilde Kya Kya Chapter 78. Sin City, 12. Doomsday Spiritual Artifact Master. Have you heard of synesthesia? Long time no see, Zhuang Qingyan." Lu Xiaoyu raised his hand, and a small cluster of glowing data branches followed his movement, silently standing up, with the leaves making a swish sound. Zhuang Qingyan dropped the makeshift crutch in his hand and sat against the wall with the help of Song Ke. His current appearance was extremely disheveled, with torn and tattered prison clothes, bloody blisters on his palms, and several scratches on his face. These were just the visible injuries. Who knows how many hidden wounds he had? After all, his wheelchair was completely destroyed, and it was impossible for him to be unscathed. After Zhuang Qingyan sat down, he had to tilt his head up to speak with Lu Xiaoyu. He made a faint tisk sound and said, "Come down." Lu Xiaoyu muttered silently, "I am a tree, and a tree only grows taller." Zhuang Qingyan interrupted him, "Quit the nonsense and come down." "Why? It's hard to look up. You're still so finicky." The flowing data formed the shape of a tree trunk, and Lu Xiaoyu slowly descended to the ground. Zhuang Qingyan's gaze finally met his. He raised his chin slightly, indicating another direction. "Since you're Lord Hades, what is he?" Song Ke belatedly realized that there was a fourth person at the scene. From the very beginning, this person had been standing still, not moving a muscle or even breathing. Her attention had been solely on Zhuang Qingyan, so she had overlooked the presence of the other person. Upon arriving in a well-lit area, the appearance of this prison guard seemed even more bizarre. While his gaze was rational and clear, his facial features and limbs were extremely stiff, like a marionette covered with human skin. No matter how realistic it was, it couldn't hide the strangeness. Song Ke's intuition told her that he was most likely not a human. "He is the warden here," Lu Xiaoyu said in a casual tone. "When I arrived, he was on the verge of death, but he seemed to want to live and not let others know he was dying. So he found me and said he wanted to do the same as that visionary, to separate his consciousness from his body and transfer it to a new body. He asked me if I could do it. I extracted all of his memories and prepared to transfer them into a new body he had improved himself. However, there was a parameter error in the middle of the process, and I couldn't fix it using my abilities. In the end, the experiment failed, and only a part of his consciousness was barely preserved. The current him is no longer considered a complete person, he only mechanically repeats residual commands. Well, that's all that's left, Lu Xiaoyu said, moving his fingers, and the blank wall projected fragments of the former Lord Hades' memories. He had once been a passionate young man who, as an adult, had willingly entered the prison industry. Starting as a low-ranking officer, he had climbed his way up to become the high-ranking chief warden. He possessed extraordinary talent and a deep sense of strategy, and through centralization, reform, and new policies, he had elevated the existence of the death prison to its zenith, becoming a revered and feared Lord Hades. However, in this world, there was the law of extreme reversal. When something reaches its zenith, it tends to transform in the opposite direction. When a person reaches their peak, they also rapidly decline. Plagued by illness, growing old, the former Lord Hades gradually became incapable and had to relinquish his power, sinking into the bottommost layer of the death prison, where one could never be reborn. While the wardens above him changed continuously, he became increasingly mysterious. It wasn't that he didn't want to leave, but his broken body and depleted energy could no longer sustain his ambitions. Zhuang Qingyan looked at the silent prison guard, witnessing his grandiose history, but the guard seemed indifferent, as if he were a complete stranger. He had once built the glory of the death prison with his own hands, but he had also succumbed to his obsession. Lu Xiaoyu was right. He was no longer a human, but a mere puppet. What's his name? I don't know, Lu Xiaoyu replied emotionlessly. He had never cared about it and had never asked. Apart from the code name, Lord Hades, his entire life had remained unknown to others. Now, even that title no longer belonged to him. A sigh was all that remained. The stripping of memories, extraction, transformation, and injection into a new body. These words that Lu Xiaoyu casually mentioned were enough to make one's heart race. If the former Lord Hades' experiment had succeeded, he would have achieved immortality in a different way, shaking the entire alliance. Lu Xiaoyu's expression turned regretful. In the end, it was because the body he chose was too fragile to contain a complete soul. He wasn't fond of conducting such experiments. In fact, he had no interest in them. He wasn't even proficient in this area, and his only attempt had been at the former Lord Hades' request. However, that failure had left a lasting impact on him, as geniuses often couldn't tolerate their own imperfections. Song Ke listened intently, her fingers unconsciously grasping something nearby. Lu Xiaoyu's icy gaze suddenly turned to her. You're touching me. Song Ke, huh? She lowered her head in bewilderment, only then realizing that she had been grabbing onto an extended branch. She quickly let go. The branch closely followed and wound around her wrist a few times, its tip touching her forearm affectionately. I can let you touch me because I'm the one who called you down, Lu Xiaoyu said. Lu Xiaoyu's gaze returned to Song Ke, and his eyes sparkled like the branches. I really like your body. How about letting me modify you? I promise it will succeed this time. No, Song Ke said, expressionless, as she shook her hand to get rid of the branch, but it clung. Lu Xiaoyu persisted, or let my consciousness enter yours. We can learn to share one body. Have you heard of synesthesia? It's when you have me in you, and I have you in me. You can feel me, and I can. Don't even think about it. Zhuang Qingyan grabbed the tip and pulled it away, saying coldly, get lost. Lu Xiaoyu faced successive rejections, retracted the branches, and pursed his lips in annoyance. He lost the desire for further social interaction and lazily leaned against the tree trunk. Why did you come to the death prison? Is this your latest research achievement? Lu Xiaoyu asked. I came here specifically to find you. Find me? Yes, before we have a formal conversation, you need to take care of this first. Zhuang Qingyan removed Song Kei's crime record and threw it together with his own with a clink sound. Lu Xiaoyu's branches rolled up the two crime records on the ground, returned them to his side, and then paused, his gaze resting on Song Kei for a moment. Song Kei felt inexplicably nervous, fearing that he might say something startling. "Don't worry, she won't," Zhuang Qingyan suddenly spoke, his tone calm and his gaze confident. Song Kei looked at him with confusion. "Won't what?" His words seemed disjointed. Lu Xiaoyu responded with a brief tapped his fingertips a few times, and then crushed the badges. Song Kei's mental state suddenly shifted, and she realized that the feeling of being constantly monitored had disappeared. Was this what unlocked it? "Did you create the crime record?" Song Kei asked, surprised. She recalled the information she had received from Cheng Yi, stating that the crime records were a technology passed down from District B. Could it be that Lu Xiaoyu had casually created them? Not entirely. Its original form was a monitoring device and didn't have punitive functions. After I connected with it, I casually broke through its firewall and felt it was a bit of a waste, so I added some things and made some improvements, Lu Xiaoyu replied offhandedly. Even without special abilities, Lu Xiaoyu was a genius-level hacker, and this was certainly something he could do. "Tell me, what do you need me for?" "I need your help to hack into the citizenship system and forge a few new identity records. We need to go to District C55. Lu Xiaoyu chuckled. "Did you also get a brain transplant? This new one doesn't seem to be working very well." Zhuang Qingyan remained expressionless. "I'm serious. You're a gene optimizer who awakened your hacking ability over a decade ago. Something like this should be a piece of cake for you. I'm in a place where using abilities is forbidden," Lu Xiaoyu reminded, implying that he couldn't use his hacking ability here. "I know, you didn't understand what I meant. I want you to leave with us. Before coming in, the biggest difficulty we encountered was how to find you. At least we've succeeded in that step. As for how to get out, we can figure that out later." "I'm not leaving," Lu Xiaoyu immediately refused. "Once a tree takes root, it won't easily move." "I'm fine here," Zhuang Qingyan sneered. "Yes, you are Lord Hades here, the heart of the death prison, and the life and death of all the prisoners depend on your whim. But stuck here, you have no idea what changes are happening in the outside world." "I don't care. Lu Corporation's supercomputer isn't dead. It can be reactivated soon." "Impossible." Lu Xiaoyu raised his head abruptly. "Even if she's not dead, there's no way she can return to normal." "What's impossible about it?" "Lu Corporation has found an alternative power source for her." "Who?" Lu Xiaoyu's voice grew colder. "A super AI with a complete personality and powerful abilities. Before we arrived in Sin City, they had already begun capturing it. Let me think, it might even be operational by now." Song Kei made a surprised sound. Zhuang Qingyan was talking about Ilya, right? But Ilya hadn't been captured, and instead, he had taken down Lu Xinglan. She opened her mouth to speak, but Zhuang Qingyan pinched her knuckles at that moment, causing Song Kei to react belatedly. Oh, Zhuang Qingyan was lying again, and this time it was even more absurd, lying even to his friend. Lu Xiaoyu's branches hung down dejectedly. Zhuang Qingyan continued, "As early as year 8 in the new calendar, the Lu family's starship was born. But for over 20 years thereafter, it remained obscure, overshadowed by other flying terminals. It wasn't until year 32 in the new calendar, after a certain technological innovation, that a new model emerged and became famous overnight in the Alliance, earning the nickname Eternal Soaring Bird. No one knew that the person who wrote the core code at that time was none other than you, Lu Xiaoyu. You flawlessly integrated the critical energy source, Yiyu, into the central calculations, achieving high-altitude supersonic flight under absolute safety conditions. It was you who single-handedly propelled the Lu family starship to its peak." Song Kei was left dumbfounded. Lu family starship, Yiyu, Lu Xiaoyu. So, Lu Xiaoyu was the true creator of the starship. The Lu family amassed countless wealth through the starship, becoming the sole owner of District B8. But, do you know that the starship has now completely collapsed? Lu Xiaoyu frowned. The code I wrote, even if it runs for another 100 years, couldn't possibly go wrong. Zhuang Qingyan shook his head slowly. It's not the code that went wrong. The Lu family starship reclaimed Yiyu. No matter how perfectly a program was designed, without a power source, the starship couldn't function. Lu Xiaoyu's branches gradually tightened. Even after learning all this, do you still intend to stay here and be your Lord Hades in peace? Zhuang Qingyan asked. Lu Xiaoyu remained quiet for a moment and then suddenly said, "You're deliberately provoking me. You haven't changed at all. You may pretend to be all nice on the surface, but deep down, you're full of evil. As soon as you find someone's soft spot, you relentlessly go after it." Zhuang Qingyan chuckled. "I did it on purpose. I know you have Asperger's syndrome. Maybe this place is better suited for you than putting on a mask and pretending to be a normal person in social situations." Lu Xiaoyu snorted. "You, a psychopath, have no right to talk about me." Song Ke looked at one, then the other, with countless question marks appearing over her head. "What are you guys talking about? What's A, and what's P?" Both of them had a cold smile on their lips, not giving an inch as they stared at each other. "Are you leaving or not? Waste. Shut up, trash." Song Ke. "Wait, weren't they getting along just fine a moment ago? Why are they arguing now?" Both of them looked at her at the same time. Song Ke's voice got smaller and smaller. "If you have something to say, please say it nicely. Don't fight." After a while, Lu Xiaoyu twitched his branch and said, "I can't leave." Zhuang Qingyan's expression turned cold. Lu Xiaoyu shot him a sideways glance and said before he could speak, "Shut up. Leaving the tree would kill me." He moved forward a bit, slowly turning around, and Song Ke could clearly see that there were various data conduits in his head, shoulders, and back. Some of these data conduits were even plugged into the nerve endings of his severed legs. If pulled out hastily, he would likely die instantly from blood loss. Lu Xiaoyu's eyelashes drooped, and his expression remained unexpectedly indifferent. Song Ke felt her heart ache. She didn't know the full story of the conflict between Lu Xiaoyu and the Lu family, but it was brutal. Severing his legs and throwing him into the depths of the death prison wasn't enough. They had to nail him within this pile of data, making his senses and countless sins interconnected, subjecting him to endless torment. Was it necessary to go this far? Even so, do you still want to take me with you? Lu Xiaoyu asked quietly. After a moment of silence, it was Song Ke who spoke first. "We do, we will definitely take you out." Zhuang Qingyan suddenly asked, "How far are we from the boundary where the use of abilities is prohibited?" Lu Xiaoyu replied, "As long as we leave the super abyss area, it's fine. It's about 12,000 meters in a straight line." Zhuang Qingyan lightly tapped the ground with his fingertip, a usual gesture when he was deep in thought. "I have some ideas. Let's first get Fang Jishu down." "Never mind, let's get all of them down." Tian Song Ke was confused with the A and P because they said Asperger's syndrome and psychotic in English. Chapter 79, Sin City, 13, Doomsday Spiritual Artifact Master. Prison break. These past few days, the death prison has been far from peaceful. Warden White met a violent end. It's said that his death was gruesome, with someone stabbing him through the throat. Floors 7 to 12 were put on lockdown, and a large number of inmates seized the opportunity to escape amidst the chaos. Shi Liang was busy dealing with the aftermath, his hands full, and the management of the original cell blocks appeared somewhat lax. As a result, Lin Yuyu and a few others were able to meet on the activity area. Su Cha had already informed them of what had happened below. Both of them went down? Lin Yuyu nervously tapped the table. "Yes," Su Cha said with a grave expression. Song Ke was absent, and Shu Xing couldn't be bothered with being coy. The little boy sat there, his brow furrowed. Lin Yuyu felt a headache coming on. Among the 6 of them, it had never been her role to make decisions. However, in the current situation, if they didn't decide quickly, the situation for Song K and the others would become more perilous. I'll take the lead in making a decision. I want to go down to find them, Lin Yu sighed. I agree. Surprisingly, Fang Jishu was the first to speak up. They had come to the death prison because of him, and now with Song K and Zhuang Qingyan in danger, he couldn't stand by and do nothing. I agree too. Xu Xing bravely raised his little hand. He was determined to save his sister. Su Cha nodded in agreement with Lin Yu. With a unanimous decision to stick together, Lin Yu gained some assurance. Well then, let's first think of a way to get down. While the four were discussing their plan, the crime record device on their shoulders suddenly lit up with a red light. Lin Yu looked at the badge in surprise. How was this possible? They hadn't committed any crimes now, so why was it glowing? Could it monitor their psychological activities as well? A secret message suddenly flashed into their minds. Lin Yu listened quietly, and her expression became strange. She noticed that the others' faces were similar to hers. The content we heard should be the same, right? Good news, Song K and Zhuang Qingyan are safe, and they've even found Lu Xiaoyu. Fang Jishu, Su Cha, and Xu Xing nodded, confirming her statement. Lin Yu paused for a moment and couldn't help but smile lightly. You received the second part of the message too, right? Song K, you really are always a source of surprises, no shock. Shi Liang hurriedly moved through the administrative area, busy arranging various matters. An underling approached him and reported, Warden, a notice has come from the 18th floor, requesting the transfer of 4 inmates down below. The 18th floor? Are there still living prisoners there? Who issued the transfer order? Shi Liang asked, surprised. The subordinate's legs were trembling as he replied, it's a direct order from that esteemed person. Shi Liang abruptly stopped, a cold snort escaping his lips. That old coot always knows how to stir up trouble. I'll reject it outright. Shi Liang had never met Lord Hades. Since his first day as warden, he had been shrouded in the shadow of this person. There were always people criticizing him, pointing out where he fell short of Lord Hades' standards, and how he couldn't do things according to the rules set by Lord Hades. He was tired of it all. But, Warden, from the perspective of your authority, you don't have the right to refuse, his subordinate stated plainly. Shi Liang glared at him with a cold expression, slowly crumpling the papers in his hand. Is that so? I don't have the right, huh? Although he was furious to the extreme, Shi Liang didn't let anger cloud his judgment. White was dead, and the immediate priority was to bring the escaped inmates under control. He needed to secure authority over floors 7 to 12 before the official transfer order came from the Alliance. Then, he would hold all the power, and no one could oppose him. As for that old coot, Lord Hades, he would be replaced sooner or later. In the future, the death prison would only have him, Shi Liang, as the warden. Once Shi Liang had calmed down, he asked, which 4 inmates have been selected for the transfer? The subordinate quickly handed over the 4 inmates' files. Shi Liang glanced at them briefly and said, retrieve the inmates' surveillance footage. In real-time surveillance, Lin Yu, Fang Jishu, and Su Cha were seen laboring honestly in their prison uniforms. Xu Xing, who had already served his sentence but was still in confinement due to unpaid fines, sat in his cell drawing, looking carefree. The last one was a tall man who had been placed in a temporary cell and hadn't been reassigned yet. Shi Liang didn't have much of an impression of Lin Yu and the others, but the moment he saw Su Cha, he frowned and recognized him immediately. Why wouldn't this person go away? He had just been sent down, and now he was back again. Seeing him brought back memories of the 10 billion he had lost. Shi Liang's good mood disappeared, and he impatiently said, since Lord Hades wants them, then send them down. Half an hour later, the prison guards responsible for transporting the inmates had set the destination floor and pushed the inmates into the elevator. Get in and behave. As the elevator doors closed, Lin Yu smiled sweetly and discreetly slipped something into the elevator wall. The same subtle actions occurred with Xu Xing on the first floor, Fang Jishu on the 4th floor, and Su Cha on the 6th floor. The 4 tracking devices left behind by Song Ke were concealed discreetly inside the moving elevators. Zhuang Qingyan extracted a usable light screen from Smail's cell and connected it to the data port on Lu Xiaoyu, beginning to study the structure of the entire death prison. Did you send the one-way signal? This is such a minor task. You don't need an ability for it, Zhuang Qingyan remarked. Quit your yapping. I've already sent it. Lu Xiaoyu's branches flowed smoothly, his pale fingertips tapping the leaves as he monitored the elevator's movements in real time. Your people are coming down. Give me the balance vector data for the particles. Why don't you calculate it yourself? I'm working on the gravity parameters. You should be thanking me. This was originally your job. The two of them made progress while bickering back and forth, occasionally arguing like they used to when working on projects together in their youth. Lu Xiaoyu rolled his eyes and swiftly completed the calculations. Out of the corner of his eye, he caught sight of a figure. In the nearby shadows, a person stood quietly, with a straight posture and stern demeanor. Wait for me. Lu Xiaoyu used his data leg to stand up and walk a few steps in the person's direction, stopping in front of him. I'm leaving, Lu Xiaoyu said. Congratulations, he replied. Lu Xiaoyu's tone remained indifferent. When I leave, there might be some commotion. The death prison might be destroyed, and it will cease to exist. The prison guard paused for a moment, not fully comprehending his words, and unable to respond effectively. But Lu Xiaoyu's words seemed to trigger something in his consciousness. He replied calmly and mechanically, the death prison. The death prison is a necessary product of the Alliance's development at a specific stage, emerging with the creation of classes and districts. His missing consciousness prevented him from dealing with a more advanced linguistic environment, causing him to repeat meaningless phrases. After he finished speaking, Lu Xiaoyu spoke again. You were one of my few failures. I also don't understand your pursuit of immortality. But if you're willing, when I leave, I can use my ability to write an operational program for you, to complete the missing part of your consciousness. But let's be clear, you won't be able to return to your previous state. At most, you'll be a kind of artificial intelligence with built-in factory memory. The prison guard remained silent for a long time, then slowly raised his arm and gave Lu Xiaoyu a standard salute, his voice low but firm. Staying in the death prison is my lifelong mission. Thank you, Lu Xiaoyu responded absent-mindedly, turning to leave. Unexpectedly, he met Song Ke's wide eyes. She hadn't eavesdropped. She had been standing there openly, listening. Song Ke blinked her eyes, her thoughts swirling. How to describe Lu Xiaoyu? He appeared to have a scattered mind, hard to communicate with, but he had his own set of standards for doing things. How did that saying go again? Oh, right, he's fiercely loyal. Song Ke looked at Lu Xiaoyu and smiled, a faint dimple appearing on her cheek. Lu Xiaoyu's ice-cold pupils narrowed slightly, and his branches secretly touched Song Ke's shoulder as he lowered his voice. While that guy isn't looking, do you want to try synesthesia with me? Song Ke's entire body bristled. No. Up ahead, Zhuang Qingyan's finger tapping on the light screen stopped abruptly, and his voice turned icy. Lu Xiaoyu, get back here and get to work. When Lin Yuyu and her group exited the elevator, someone was already waiting for them. A prison guard with gray hair, wearing a uniform, spoke in a deep voice, "Follow me." The group silently followed him as they descended further from the 18th floor. They passed through a dark corridor and arrived at a spacious area, where they saw the illuminated data tree and Lu Xiaoyu. They stared in disbelief, deeply awed by the sight. Xu Xing ran over and hugged Song Ke's thigh. After a brief exchange of information, Fang Jishu was called away by Zhuang Qingyan. These tubes, can you deal with them? Zhuang Qingyan crouched down and carefully examined the data interfaces on Lu Xiaoyu's body. They already knew that levels below the 7th floor were designated as abilities-restricted areas. I can quickly remove them, but stopping the bleeding and suturing requires special abilities, which are challenging to use here, Fang Jishu explained. For now, let's forget about suturing. I'll give you an additional 30 seconds of ability time. You can use it to stop the bleeding for him. Can you do it? Zhuang Qingyan asked. I can. The 7 of them sat in a circle, and Zhuang Qingyan activated a projection. A clear schematic of the death prison's structure appeared before them. Let's go through the plan once more. We're preparing to leave this damned place. At 5 o'clock in the afternoon, the work shift came to an end. All the internal elevators in the death prison suddenly became restless without anyone controlling it. Ding, clank, the sounds of impacts echoed continuously as these massive structures seemed to have an agreement to rush in the same direction, toward the same floor. The death prison is an inverted cone. The quickest way to escape is to turn it upside down. What we need to do is use enough weight to forcibly alter the gravitational field. Zhuang Qingyan switched to a 3-dimensional map. After rotating it 180 degrees, their current 19th floor became the top floor. Do you know what's the heaviest thing in the death prison? The elevators. Xu Xing eagerly raised his hand to answer. That's right. Every internal elevator is made of high-density metal structures with astonishing mass. If we gather all of them, we can achieve the goal of flipping the death prison. The operating programs of hundreds of elevators simultaneously came under attack from an unknown virus. They all piled up in the corner on the first floor's oil reservoir. The ground began to tilt. Heavy objects fell uncontrollably and rolled out, causing the inmates to stumble and fall, their vision spinning. Steel frames in the factory broke, showering countless sparks, and the death prison started sinking into the seabed. But what if they use elevators to capture us? Song K raised a question. Right, so just in case, we need to cut off the possibility of being pursued, Zhuang Qingyan concluded. On the 19th floor where V-587 was located, they sliced through the waves, rapidly ascending. 12,000 meters, 10,000 meters, 8,000 meters, 6,000 meters. The moment they left the super abyss zone, their awakened energy was restored, and they could use their abilities. On the 6th floor of the death prison, Shi Liang struggled to support himself against the wall and shouted, "What's going on?" The prison guard trembled as he reported, "It seems to be the 18th floor. Inmates have escaped from the 18th floor, and there's commotion. Again, it's the 18th floor, and it's another escape." In an instant, Shi Liang thought of the culprit who had cost him 10 billion, that bastard named Su Cha. If he had known, he wouldn't have let him go no matter what. That Lord Hades is also useless, unable to even control his own inmates. Special police team, arm yourselves and follow me down. Shi Liang was furious, swaying as he headed towards the elevator. In that case, he would personally resolve it, regardless of what Lord Hades said, or any rules. He would deal with the person completely and be done with it. Inside the crowded elevator, the 4 kunai suddenly began to glow. Powerful awakened energy kept pouring in. Boom! All the elevators exploded into ruins. Shi Liang took a step into the flames, and he was blown out, his face scorched and he fell unconscious. On the 19th floor of the death prison, the tip of the cone-shaped structure was just a few hundred meters away from the sea surface. Song K, Zhuang Qingyan shouted. Lin Yuyu's singing voice echoed, empowering Song K. Song K was enveloped in blue light, transforming a massive 5-meter-long battle axe. She activated her core powers and swung her arm, smashing the tip of the 19th floor. Bang, bang, bang. The sturdy outer wall crumbled, black seawater surged in, and Song K was drenched in it, choking on a mouthful of seawater. Xu Xing nodded solemnly, and his awakened ability was released, instantly freezing the incoming seawater into an escape passage. Fang Jishu was fully focused, sweat forming on his forehead. Only a few dozen tubes remained on Lu Xiaoyu's severed leg, and he swiftly removed them with his left hand while using his awakened ability to stop the bleeding with his right hand. His movements were so fast that they were almost imperceptible. Lu Xiaoyu shivered all over, his face as pale as snow. Intense pain surged through all his nerves, but he didn't utter a sound. The mass is starting to deviate, Su Cha reminded them. Sure enough, the death prison had started to descend again. Forcibly altering the gravitational field could only be sustained for a short time, and with Lu Xiaoyu losing control over the elevator, their time was running out. Everyone's gaze was fixed on Fang Jishu. 10 tubes, 7 tubes, 3 tubes, the last one. Fang Jishu, racing against the clock, pulled out the final tube and swiftly treated the wound. Lu Xiaoyu was finally free. Hurry, let's go. Several kilometers away, the citizens of the underground city looked up in disbelief toward the direction of the death prison. The once calm underground sea churned with colossal waves, and the surface roiled and stirred. This soon triggered a massive tsunami, rushing out and submerging the entire trading street. Rain poured down like a torrential downpour, leaving everyone astonished. Could it be that the death prison is in trouble? The crime record has disappeared. Amid the crowd swimming around, a joyous shout suddenly echoed. Others quickly lowered their heads to check and, indeed, all the bars on the sign had disappeared, rendering the crime record a useless piece of scrap metal. Cheng Yi, in a state of chaos while trying to salvage crystals from her store, suddenly remembered something. She rushed to grab the terminal that the group had stored with her and dashed towards the direction of the underground sea. "Hey!" shouted Lu Xiaoyu just as they were about to escape, stopping the prison guard. Pale fingertips streamed with data, touching the guard's forehead. An icy, dominant superpower surged in, like an epiphany, as a foreign code entered the guard's consciousness, filling in the missing fragments of his soul. "I, Lu Xiaoyu, never make defective products." Song Ke waited for him to finish speaking with a proud expression, then picked up his collar, turned around and ran away. The ice seawater gradually melted, and the 19th floor, one step away from freedom, fell into the sea again. The prison guard's vision became narrower and narrower, and finally he vaguely saw a woman with a strange hairstyle meeting Lu Xiaoyu and the others at the beach. Zhuang Qingyan pulled out 2 wheelchairs from his spatial storage. He chose a premium one for himself, but handed Lu Xiaoyu a basic one. Lu Xiaoyu was furious. "I want your chair." Zhuang Qingyan sneered, "There are only 2 left, take it or leave it." "Stop arguing, let's go." The girl with shoulder-length hair pushed the heads of the 2 in opposite directions and, with a strong pull, lifted them up and ran off. Boom! There was another round of spinning, and the death prison fell back into the abyss, then turned back up. The silent prison guard sealed off the 19th floor and slowly walked back to the 18th floor, sitting alone in the darkness for an unknown amount of time. Until the noisy voices rushed in. "We've arrived at the 18th floor, the escaped prisoners. Lord Hades, Lord Hades." Several middle-aged prison guards with panicked expressions saw his face and exclaimed in shock. The former Lord Hades slowly stood up and spoke in a deep voice, "Liao Yi, Lu'er, long time no see." In reality, he didn't remember the names of these 2 individuals at all. The implanted memories had informed him of their names. "Lord, are you planning to come back and manage the death prison again?" The 2 of them asked with excitement. With one of the wardens dead and one severely injured, the death prison was in chaos. If Lord Hades could return at this moment, it would be a powerful reassurance to everyone. "Yes, I'm back," the former Lord Hades nodded solemnly. His mind, however, couldn't help but wonder. He could remember everyone else's names, but what was his own name? He couldn't recall it, and that didn't matter. He could start anew. "From today on, don't call me Lord Hades. There is no Lord Hades in the death prison anymore. I am Hu Yang, the moderate Yang." Tian, the character, Yang, means to adapt to changes and use the right person at the right time, emphasizing the importance of balance and moderation in one's actions. Chapter 80. Sin City, 14, Doomsday Spiritual Artifact Master. "You are famous now. How is he?" Lu Xiaoyu lay pale on the bed, his silver hair falling over his shoulders. Even in deep slumber, his brows were tightly furrowed. Song Ke anxiously gazed at him. After escaping from the death prison, Lu Xiaoyu only managed to hold on until they reached the safe house before losing consciousness. There is no immediate life-threatening danger, but he needs some time to recover. Fang Jishu continuously inputted white energy into his body, and the surgical procedure went very smoothly. Hundreds of injuries on Lu Xiaoyu's body were treated properly. Why did he go into a coma? Song Ke asked. Fang Jishu looked serious. All the tubes you see are connected to his nerves. While he can manipulate the data in the entire death prison, his own life force is also being absorbed and lost. So when the connection is severed, he becomes even more fragile than an ordinary person. No wonder Lu Xiaoyu called himself a tree. Trees absorb nutrients from the soil and then transport the stored nutrients to various branches and leaves. If he weren't a powerful awakener, he might have already been depleted of his life force in the daily torment. The pain Lu Xiaoyu endured when those tubes were pulled out could be imagined. Equally sensitive, Lin Yuyu sighed deeply by his side. Is there hope for his legs to heal? Lu Xiaoyu lay under the blanket, and where his 2 legs should have been, there was nothing. Fang Jishu shook his head slowly. We can only consider using prosthetic materials or mechanical replacements. A silence fell, and after a while, a faint sigh could be heard. Zhuang Qingyan spoke with a cold, clear voice. Lu Xiaoyu is a hacker-type awakener. Even without his legs, it won't affect his abilities. However, I still suggest you put away your sympathy and compassion. He doesn't need them. He's a strange person by nature. Your excess emotions will only disturb yourselves and won't cause any fluctuations in him. Lin Yuyu sighed. You're right, but I'm not sighing out of sympathy for him. I'm sighing as I look up to the big shot. Just thinking that the crime record where you get zapped into oblivion was his doing gives me the shivers. You've never been zapped, Su Cha unexpectedly chimed in, causing a disruption. When it comes to unlucky individuals who have been zapped, the one among them who was most deeply affected by the crime record is Su Cha. The coldness that penetrated his mind is unforgettable for him. Fortunately, Lu Xiaoyu removed it for them. Otherwise, if he had been zapped a few more times, he might have ended up like Jorik, confused and dazed. I'm using a metaphor here, highlighting how strong he is. Do you understand? Lin Yuyu shot him a glare. Today, she had finally put on a full face of makeup, and with that one glance, the aura of a female celebrity instantly radiated, simply dazzling and captivating, too bright to look at directly. Su Cha paused and casually turned his head away, acting as if nothing happened. Speaking of the crime record, it reminds them of awakened abilities. Song Ke tugged at Zhuang Qingyan's sleeve and asked, what level is he? Lu Xiaoyu awakened before the apocalypse. In his mental power test as an adult, his potential is 97%, just one step away from S level. Zhuang Qingyan continued in a solemn tone, even if he wasted a few years in the death prison, he should have no problem breaking through to S level. S level, mystical hacking type awakener. Song Ke's eyes sparkled. Wow. Xu Xing pursed his lips and, with a serious expression, calculated how much time it would take for his 90% potential to break through. So who's more powerful, him or Ilya? Song Ke immediately ruled out Lu Xinglan. Judging by the colors of their irises alone, Lu Xiaoyu's pure ice blue eyes were more dominant. Among the people she knew, the one with the most formidable data manipulation abilities was Ilya, the Lord of Ferrara. Never had a chance to cross paths, so I can't say, but AI naturally fears his abilities. Don't forget, just before Lu Xiaoyu escaped, he created an artificial intelligence. The fact that Lu Xiaoyu could create AI was enough to shock the world. He could create AI, but of course, he could also destroy it. S-level hacker-type awakeners were the #1 nemesis of all artificial intelligence. Song Ke couldn't help but let her mind wander. If Lu Xiaoyu had gone to Ferrara in the first place, she wondered how Ilya would have dealt with it. Could he have easily dealt with it like he did with Lu Xinglan, taking over his body? No, Ilya wanted an unrestricted body, and with both of Lu Xiaoyu's legs broken, he clearly wouldn't meet the requirements. Moreover, He and the Liu family were sworn enemies and probably wouldn't do any favors for them. After thinking it through, the addition of S-level Awakener, Liu Xiaoyu, to V587 represented a significant boost in their overall strength. As the captain, she had a responsibility to protect this valuable asset. Song Ke turned to Zhuang Qingyan with a sly smile. Or maybe you should give him the wheelchair? Zhuang Qingyan squinted his eyes, his tone gradually became colder. Song Ke. Do you really have such a fickle heart? Do you like the new and dislike the old? He hummed softly. Song Ke nervously cleared her throat and shook her head repeatedly. Is there something you're not satisfied with about me? No, I'm not. You, don't talk nonsense. Song Ke quickly waved her hands, feeling very wronged. After all, she was the fairest captain. Knock. Cheng Yi entered the room just in time, rescuing Song Ke, who was sitting on pins and needles. Thanks to Cheng Yi's timely support, they were able to evacuate quickly. She had provided this safe house, but of course, Song Ke had also contributed a substantial amount of crystals. After all, businessmen never took a loss. Song Ke turned her head to greet her, and Lin Yu asked, by the way, Boss Cheng, I'd like to go out and purchase some supplies. Do you have any suggestions? Cheng Yi immediately stopped her. No, please don't go out. Song Ke was taken aback. What's wrong? Is something happening outside? Cheng Yi laughed heartily. You guys have become famous. It's all over the streets. V587, mighty and domineering, demolished Shi Liang's 10 billion, defeated Warden White, rescued a mysterious death prison inmate, turned the death prison upside down. Now the entire Sin City knows your notorious names. Song Ke nervously asked, are we going to be hunted down? Cheng Yi chuckled as she shook her head. On the contrary, thanks to you, the crime record is now ineffective, and both Shi Liang and White have been toppled. With the new warden taking office, the death prison is thriving, and people outside are raving about you. You might be swamped by fans if you go out. But there's something I'm really curious about. Cheng Yi stroked her chin, her eyes scanning the group. You caused such a huge commotion, turned the death prison upside down, and repairing the damage and cleaning up the mess are substantial tasks. Why hasn't the death prison issued an arrest warrant until now? Zhuang Qingyan suddenly asked, who is this new warden you're talking about? He just emerged these days. His name is Hu Yang. White has been defeated, Shi Liang is critically injured, and Lord Hades, who has been in seclusion for a long time, is no longer overseeing the situation in the death prison. This Hu Yang is quite capable. For some reason, even the prison guards willingly obey him. In any case, he quickly cleaned up the mess, and now the entire death prison follows his orders. I heard that he has already ordered a re-evaluation of the inmates' records, releasing some and arresting others. It seems that the personnel in Sin City will undergo a major reshuffling in the near future. Song Ke and Zhuang Qingyan exchanged a look, silently thinking of the same person. That silent prison guard was indeed a formidable individual. Even after forgetting his past personality and memories, he had still, in another form, fulfilled his long-standing wish. Thanks for giving me a free show. In return, let me handle the procurement of supplies, Cheng Yi said as she stood up, flipping her half-dyed purple hair with a shrewd and cunning smile. As for the service fee, I'll give you a discount. In her smile, Song Ke quietly clutched her money pouch. Early the next morning, Song Ke went to visit Liu Xiaoyu. To her surprise, he was already awake, sitting alone in a wheelchair, with electronic sounds from various key adjustments constantly ringing. Curious, Song Ke leaned in for a closer look. To her amazement, Liu Xiaoyu had built himself a pair of mechanical legs. They had a shiny, silvery texture that blended seamlessly with the basic wheelchair. When he wanted to stand, the mechanical legs automatically extended and fastened around his waist to help him stand up. With these legs, he stood at over 2.5 meters tall, exuding an imposing and powerful presence. Song Ke gazed up in awe. watching Lu Xiaoyu proudly demonstrate his new legs. How do you like it? With the materials available, this is the most perfect state I can achieve. Amazing, Song K applauded enthusiastically, truly impressed. She didn't expect that, in addition to being a top-tier hacker, Lu Xiaoyu had such remarkable talent in mechanics. My GPA in Practical Theory of Mechanical Design and Engineering Structures is 5.0, he's only 4.2. Lu Xiaoyu lifted his chin slightly, appearing casual but taking the opportunity to subtly take a jab at someone. That, he, naturally referred to Zhuang Qingyan. Song K thought of something Lu Xiaoyu had just mentioned, with the materials available. She asked, "Where did you get the materials for this?" He had been unconscious just yesterday and hadn't even left the safe house. Where did he find the materials to modify his wheelchair? Oh, Lu Xiaoyu's expression remained unchanged, his tone casual. I disassembled Zhuang Qingyan's wheelchair. Cough, cough. Song K choked on her own saliva, coughing violently. Lu Xiaoyu spoke confidently. He has 2 extra legs compared to me, he's just limping. Why should he use a higher grade wheelchair? Does he deserve it? Song K, whether he deserves it or not, you can't just disassemble his wheelchair. She felt that this was a major problem, and if Zhuang Qingyan, who was quite petty, found out, it would not be good. She needed to check on the situation quickly. You should rest. Wait, Lu Xiaoyu stopped her. Can I borrow your terminal? He had been imprisoned in the death prison for over 5 years, mostly cut off from the outside world. He urgently needed to catch up with the current state of the world. As for the F-180 district not having internet access? What a joke, he was a hacker-type awakener. As long as there was data, as long as he wished, there was no information he couldn't access. Song K rummaged through her backpack, frantically searching for her terminal and the old-fashioned light screen she carried. She handed them over to Lu Xiaoyu. Then, she hurriedly ran to Zhuang Qingyan's room and eavesdropped on the door for a while. No sound could be heard, he was probably still asleep. Hurry, she needed to get a new wheelchair. Song K donned her full disguise, wearing a hat and mask, and rushed outside. The overall atmosphere of Sin City was indeed different from the past, with more law enforcement personnel on the streets. A thin man ran past Song K, scooping up a woman in front of him. Qiang, how did you get out? The woman was surprised and delighted. I was released. I'm innocent. A special police officer in death prison uniform passed by the two embracing, crying people and entered the adjacent Red Willow Hotel. Jade, is it? You were arrested on suspicion of intentional homicide. Trading Street was still bustling, but there were people both rejoicing and worried. As Song K walked past the restaurant where Su Cha had been arrested before, it was business as usual inside. Have you seen V587? Someone asked excitedly. More than just seeing them. They even robbed me of my crystals. The burly Gaida climbed onto a table, spouting exaggerated stories, his words flying like spit and making the ceiling fall apart. It was a scorching afternoon, and my brothers and I were hunting mutant zombies in the desert. What kind of people are V587? Someone in the audience asked impatiently. I only know the most famous one is called Su Cha. It seems, there's also a woman who plays with curved knives, but I don't have much impression of the others. Song K tugged the brim of her hat down low and discreetly walked past, keeping her achievements and identity well hidden.